What's going on, everybody? Gunnar here, and today is all about swinging bucktails. Check it out. Now, I just made a video where you can see this fly that we're about to tie swimming. You can also see the pheasant run baitfish swimming, sticking a bunch of smallmouths and walleyes, even a channel cat. And basically, I want to make you aware of that, not because, well, so that if you want to see these flies catch fish, you can. But also at the end, I do a discussion on kind of my impressions on switch rods, which I love now. I think they're absolutely a phenomenal tool for wade fishing. So if you want kind of an introduction to switch rods, pros and cons, their usefulness and scenarios where you can use them, check out that video. You can find a link to it here. I think it'll be helpful. But what we're going to do is we're going to tie a bucktail swing fly. And swing fly meaning that it's just tied on a shank with a stinger hook dressed off that shank, so that on a tail first presentation you get higher hookups. So that's the intention behind the rigging there. And I had just never seen basically a bucktail fly tied swing style. I've never seen it. And I've fished bucktail flies for years now, and I absolutely love fishing bucktail deceivers and bulkheads and 3D flies. And I have swung them on the traditional short shank style, and you definitely get hits and misses, and then they get it and get the hook. And when I switched up to just a shank and stinger hook, the hookups went through the roof. They'd find it every single time. So it was a really fun pattern to play with, and that's what we're going to tie today. So the platform for this fly is Greg Senyo's 25mm steelhead articulated shank, produced by Flyman. To get this guy rigged up, what you're going to need is some extra large bead chain. Now this has a little bit of nuance to it that I'm gonna address. I'm going to use a size 4 home run trailer hook from Arex Hooks. It's probably my favorite hook to use. It's truly appropriate for smallmouth or really big trout. Nice thick gauge wire on it, but not too heavy. And then we're going to articulate that back with Greg Senyo's intruder trailer hook wire in size large. So that's for size 6 hooks and larger on average. That's kind of your gauge wire there. And that's just nylon coated stainless steel. Now to get the rig kind of started, I'm going to come in with 210 Flymaster Plus. I kind of like to use the Flymaster to get everything locked in place. So I'm just going to close that R-bend, come over, close this R-bend. Now sometimes those R-bends get wanky on you. Try to keep them nice and level. And what I'm going to do is way here, right at the back where those two R-bends connect, I'm going to put in a pair of bead chain. Now, for the purpose of keeling this fly and controlling the orientation, the bead chain is more or less useless. It does not have enough weight to do anything. And so when you look at this fly, the only way to control the orientation is basically by the water tension on the various bucktail stacks, because the whole fly is tied only out of bucktail and wing and flash. That's just bucktail and wing and flash. It's the only thing you need to tie the whole fly. And then I just dress it with some peacock and make it look pretty, but it's not important. And so the way you control the orientation is by the water tension on these neutrally buoyant materials, the length and the degree of flare that they are stacked. And I want to give you an example. So this is the first one I ever tied up. This is the one that's in the fishing videos. And you can see this little underbelly right here hugs those eyes really close, and I have very little flare underneath this fly. This one rode true. I thought it should ride true. Got the bead chain on the bottom, got a long wing on top, got short wings on the belly. Sounds like everything should be perfect, right? But when I was playing with this, let me find it real quick, I tied some up in the same fashion, but these ones, my bucktail in the belly is flared a little bit too much. I used air, or a hair that had more trapped air in it, so I got more flare to it. And then the lead eyes this time, when I tied up to them, they really flared that bucktail stack. Now, the farther away that bucktail flares, the more leverage it has to control the orientation of that hook. This fly rides upside down. So then what I did is I played with it, because that's what you should do. As a designer, you should play with stuff. And check this out. But what we did here is I put the eyes on top. Now that seems counterintuitive, but what I did is I used the eyes to flare the top wing to increase the leverage of the top wing, and then that allowed all the bottom wings, which are sparser, to really contour that fly. Now this thing, no matter what you do to it, no matter how crazy your current is, it rides perfectly like that at a nice little angle, and you end up with a deep-bodied silhouette with bucktail tips from the whole belly, and it looks like a perfect little shad imitation or something. Nice high profile, deep-bodied fish, and a really accurate three-dimensional shape. Just like that. That's how it rides in the water. So when we put our lead eyes on, not our lead eyes, our bead chain eyes, I'm going to intentionally try to find them. So when we come in with our bead chain eyes, I'm going to intentionally put them on top. I'm going to use that R-bend where that double wire comes in to set a nice little foundation for these eyes. I'm just going to figure eight them. And I'm going to use them to flare that topmost wing, the front wing, which is going to be my longest wing, and then I'm going to give it some height, and that's going to allow this fly to control the keel and orientation so I can run it, hook up, and do whatever I want to it, and it's not going to lose that keel in the water. Now I mentioned those R-bends can get a little wonky, so you just saw me reef on that. Make sure you like the way everything looks. Don't just move on. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in with that trailer hook. Now this hook, the home run trailer, it has an upturned eye, but it's not upturned so that your wire will run true. It's designed more for braid, I think. So I'm just going to put that in a pair of pliers and bend that eye up so I get a nice true straight line run. I'm going to come in and thread my wire here. So you can see with that little extra bend in there, runs perfectly true, nice and straight back. Now you need a short little stinger here. I'm just going to catch that with my thread. And right now it's on top of that R-bend. I'm going to shove my nail into it and get the two pieces to slip down to the sides. And then I'm going to pull that back right about there. So it's like an inch and a half set back into the fly. And then lock that in with a bunch of pressure. You can pull that wire down underneath. And then we're going to run those up and make sure that this is all locked in place for a big old fish. Sorry to take so long describing some of the nuance of that, but it pays to understand how those wings are going to react, how the stabilizer wings are going to pull, understanding how the height of that wing and the flare of the wing controls the leverage of it, and simply using the bead chain to flare it, even though it's on the wrong side of the hook, it guarantees that it rides true. So I really want to nail that home so that you guys understand the wings are the sole factor to how this fly rides, so I can ride it hook point up and then use all my various sink tips to control the position in the water column. So let's jump in. Time to make some magic. So all you guys need is bucktail. What you have to understand is you want it in different lengths. So what we're going to do is we're going to stack a medium wing, a long wing, and a long wing. Now the belly is going to be basically kind of like short, super short, super short. Now the reason why I'm addressing this is because when you take bucktail is tapered. It's fat at the base, it's skinny at the tip. If you come and take a long fiber and you cut it short, you lose that progression. You lose the ability to build bulk, you lose the stiffness, and then you don't have as much movement. You really want to use the fibers at their full length relative to their position. So you need a medium tail, and you need a long tail and a long tail, and you need short tails. Don't try to tie this with one bucktail. It's going to fail. You want to maximize the movement by having the full progression of taper. That way you can build the volume, have the stiffness, and the limp tips to swim, water push, everything. It's all in having the taper. So I'm going to come in first with a medium wing. We're going to put it on top. This one happens to be white. I don't even have thread on my shank. Distracted. That's what's going on here. Now you can tie this, by the way, on the long shank and the 40 millimeter, but in order to tie the big version, like a 6-inch version, you have to have premium tail. You need 6-inch, 6.5-inch tail. Most of you aren't going to have that, so I'm going to show you the smaller version here, which is, I kind of like to fish this one anyway, so the small version is more applicable for more scenarios. So some medium length hair, cleaned out the butts, and you can see it's pretty sparse, and that's one thing you have to get used to, because we're going to tie the fly top and bottom. So you're not going to tie this fly in the round, and so you need about half as much hair as you'd normally tie in. Really lock that in with some thread pressure. And then I'm going to come in and put some flash on this stack. So everything is going to be wing and flash. And it's really fun, if you have multiple colors of wing and flash, to blend them throughout the fly, because you get some pretty cool little color blends. So I tease that out, cut it in half so it's nice and short. All the wing and flash stacks are going to be relative to the length of the bucktail. I put that around my bobbin thread, tied it in place, and flared it. And I'll go over that again because I know I didn't address it very well. So this bottom stack is going to be super short, super sparse. Now this fly in the vise is going to look pretty ugly because my vise is going to flare the hair. So you're not going to like the look of that, but just be aware of that. And then measure this off. You want it to be a little bit shorter. Come in. I'm actually going to catch this basically on the side of my shank here, and then let the thread tension bring it up to the top. And then you can always come in and just manipulate it with your fingers. Get your thumbnail in there. Make sure you like the way it lays. Don't ever move on until you like something. And then I'm just going to take my thread and I'm going to collapse that a little bit. Now you can't tell that I'm collapsing it because it's going to flare off my vise. But I collapsed it a little bit so it's nice and tight to that shank. Again, I teased out some wing and flash. This time I'm going to be a little more thorough. Cut it in half, teased it out so the ends are tapered. I'm going to drape it around my thread, pin it right to the top. Then you can kind of fan it out and then just hit it with your fingernail. And if you hit your fingernail right on top of your thread, it'll all spread out and you'll get a nice even kind of distribution there. Run right up to the eye, not the hook eye but the bead chain eye, and then hit that with some super glue. Now I'm going to come in with a little bit longer wing. This is nice bucktail. You don't need something crazy premium to tie this in the smaller size. Be aware of that. You just need some nice, 4.5-inch hair or something like that. And I'm going to come in. I like to use orange. I think it makes for a sick accent color. And it needs to be just a little bit longer. You can put the two together and just touch it. Make it a little bit longer. Come and cut that nice and vertical. Hold that right behind the eyes. Bring that down, get some good little flair to it. Preen it out so that you got some volume in there. And there you go. Now again, I'm going to change the color of wing and flash to add some complexity here. So I'm going to come in with silver. And I'm going to tie this in at full length. Notice I did not cut that in half. Because again, it's relative to the length of my wing. Try to get some volume, or try to get that to spread out a little bit. You don't all want it in one spot there. Now we'll flip to the bottom, come in with some super short hair. And you want this nice and sparse. Nice and very sparse. You don't want to give these wings too much leverage. Measure it off so that it's nice and short, shorter than that hair. And just lock that in. Now these bottom ones, once that flash is on that first stack, you don't really need to keep adding it. But yeah, basically you don't need to keep adding it. And what I'm going to come in now is one piece of lateral scale. So lateral scale is this super thick piece of mylar, and it's textured. And I like it because it reflects a lot of light. Now if you're going to use this as a lateral line, it's obviously a little thick, but what you want to make sure you do is when you pin this to the side, you want to try to match the orientation of your wing. I'll show you what I mean right there. I'll flip that over. but you want that to go up at the same angle as the bucktail, because this fly in the water, it doesn't ride level. It's not a level fly. It's designed to sag. So you can see how those are moved. This one's tied level, right? When this fly sits in the water, it sits like this, and then that's not properly contouring that fly. You want that lateral line to be at the same angle as your wing, so that as that tilts back, it's actually in the correct silhouette and position relative to the fly. Then we're just going to hit this with super glue, and we're almost done. Now there's one more thing of nuance that I want to address right here. I'm going to do it on this fly. So all my flies so far, they all have peacock dressed in 2 stations. So I have peacock over the orange and I have peacock on the top wing. I think it looks the prettiest. Peacock is absolutely beautiful. Now when you put this thing in a tank, which we're going to do at the end, or you put this thing in highly turbulent water, a lot of times that peacock, it lifts up and it distorts the silhouette of the fly. It doesn't contour it. The underwing, this rides true. The underwing rides true, and this is something I learned from Mark Sadati watching his slammer tutorials. So you come in, if you don't like the way that peacock looks when it moves off that fly, if you don't like the way that look of that, don't put it on the final stack. Leave it right here on this stack. When you put it on this stack, it'll all ride true. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of peacock, and that applies to the pheasant rump baitfish pattern as well. Fan that out so you get a nice dark realistic back, and then just leave that right there. That way you have a nice dark back, and then you're going to tuck a wing over that so that that can't lift up and breathe and create kind of distortion to your silhouette. Now this is ultra premium bucktail. I like this color combo, which is why I'm using it. You need about a 5-inch hair. That's what you want. That way you have all the different lengths, 5, 4.5, 4 inches in there. You want this one to be fairly dense, because this is the one that's going to control the fly. This is the one that creates your orientation and your keel and allows it to ride true and stable. I'm going to get that on top, make sure I like where it is, stop it from rotating, put some flair into it, and then lock that down. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of wing and flash, and this time I'm using medium brown. So this is something that I always love doing. I love changing that color of wing and flash. It just complexity, complexity, complexity. You can add quite a lot of different tones and realism with really nothing. It doesn't hold any water, doesn't create any extra wind resistance, and it allows that fly to really look like the real deal in the water. Flip to the underside. Gonna come in with the shortest hair. Pretty sparse too. Clean that out. Measure it off so that you know it's shorter. It should be nice and kind of just a little chunky throat patch here. Pin that right to the bottom. Don't like the way that catches. There we go. Get a little flare to that, and you can see without the bead chain on the bottom, that's able to totally just go straight back. My thread's slipping off that bucktail, so I got to build up a little bit of a head here. There we go. Now I'm going to leave the peacock off of this one, even though I like the peacock. I think it looks sexier. I want you to see this one in the tank without the peacock. And see, I'll show you both because I got both tied up. I'll show you both. And you guys can decide for yourselves. The one I fished and caught all the fish on, it had the peacock on the top. Just so you know, I don't really think it matters. I think the most important thing is just the silhouette and the color and the flash and the movement and the fact that it rides true and gets up in their face. They don't like it. So that's the fly. And I kind of like that the head is just, you just tie it off and hit it with super glue and you're done. There's no eye work or anything like that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put this guy in the fish tank and show you how it swims in the water, show you how those wings stabilize the fly, show you how that bead chain, even though it's on top, is forcing that wing up, allowing it, giving it the most leverage. And then I'll show you the difference between peacock under the wing and how that swims in silhouettes in the water, which I think looks better in the water. But then I'll show you the peacock on top, which looks better from a photography standpoint and selling flies. So you guys can choose. Let's hit the tank. Alright, let's show you the one we just tied up. I'll show you she rides true, get her wet. Make sure there's no air in it. Look at that. That thing is sexy. So something you got to remember, the most consistent uniform water is literally right up here by the surface. Anytime it kind of dips down, there's a lot of turbulence right here. It doesn't ride true. It's not actually showing you what it looks like in the water in the real river. So you can see how those wings, nice and long, the whole fly dips back, heavy in the butt. You got tips all the way to the top. You can see how that peacock wing rides more or less nice and true right up there underneath that bucktail. So then I'm going to dip this guy into the tube, and I got to change the camera angle here so you guys can see everything. So I took that guy out, and I'm going to put in the one that has the wing on top of the final bucktail stack. And I think you'll see it doesn't quite look as nice in the water. That stack gets all wanky and flies around. Let me lock this in place here before I start jibber jabbing. That wing just lifts up just that tad and doesn't really clean the silhouette up, if that makes sense. It's not really a part of the fly. It kind of rides up on top. So I don't really think it, makes the biggest difference. The one I caught all the fish on, it had both. So I had the understack and the overstack. Seemed to swim nice and well, but might be one of those things to consider. If you want the cleanest silhouette, tucking it under the wing makes for the nicest looking fly. Ooh, that's sweet. Thanks for watching. Check it out, tie one up. Watch the fishing video if you get a chance. Happy swinging.